The 30-something-year-old social worker who pretended to be a high school student for months has finally learned her fate. It's been years since investigators discovered that Shelby Hewitt was using different identities to enroll in at least 3 different public schools in the Boston area, but now she is owning up to her actions in court. But the fallout may not be over yet. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. By the way, there's something that we use here at Law and Crime that I think could be really useful to you. It's called Truth Finder. It's the public records search service. It saves us a lot of time when we do research on people, but for you, listen to this. You type in a name, you find addresses, you find criminal history. That can give you some peace of mind. It is our go-to tool for doing background checks. It's one of the largest search services in the United States, and with a subscription, you can get unlimited confidential searches to check on new neighbors or vet people you meet online or just find somebody to reconnect with. You can even look up registered sex offenders in an area or even do a background search on yourself. Stay informed, stay safe, check public records with TruthFinder now at truthfinder.com/LC Sidebar. During the 2022-2023 school year, a new student enrolled in Jeremiah E. Burke High School, now called Albert D. Holland High School in Dorchester, Massachusetts. The student said she was 16-year-old foster child Danielle Herrera. And I'll tell you what, it would be months before administrators uncovered the very unsettling truth that she was actually Shelby Hewitt, a social worker who is in her 30s by this time. So as an investigation into Hewitt's actions and how she pulled it off got underway, officials learned that Hewitt had actually used multiple assumed identities to enroll in at least 3 different high schools between September 2022 and June of 2023. She used fake documents to further this ruse that she was a child in Massachusetts' foster care system. According to police, Hewitt enrolled as a 16-year-old student at Burke High School in the fall of 2022, where she actually, by the way, joined the girls' basketball team. And get this, she chose the number 32 for her jersey because that was her real age. Then she requested a transfer to Brighton High School, and in June of 2023, police say she enrolled under a different name at English High School in Jamaica Plain, this time, by the way, posing as a 13-year-old. Interesting, you get older, yet pose as a younger person. Very interesting to think about that. But according to reporting from NBC 10 Boston, a man claiming to be Hewitt's dad went to English High School and said he was pulling her out because of bullying. But she had just enrolled a week before and the school was working on addressing the bullying situation, so things kind of felt a little pinky, right? And then when administrators called the school district to verify some paperwork, that's when they found some errors. So they tried to contact the social worker that was listed on her enrollment form for clarification about what was going on here. Turns out that person didn't exist. Police were their next call, as you can imagine. Now, students at the school reportedly started to notice that something was off too. Sometimes Hewitt's stories didn't line up correctly, but really they chalked that up to her, maybe having a tough upbringing, maybe it was reserved, maybe confused, as she had made claims that she was abused and that she was trafficked. But this is the important point. This is according to the Boston Globe. Some students found Hewitt's actual yearbook photo from when she went to Sharon High School all the way back in 2007. That was the giveaway. Now, no word, by the way, on if the man allegedly pretending to be Hewitt's dad was ever found or charged, but what we do know is that Hewitt was charged, faced 9 counts connected to identity fraud and document forgery. An arrest warrant was issued in June of 2023. She turned herself in. She was released on a $5,000 bond, according to NBC 10. There were strict conditions put in place that she couldn't go near any schools or contact the people there. Mass Live spoke with a woman who attended Burke High School at the same time as Hewitt, actually befriended her. She told the outlet, quote, "It just makes me hard to trust people. It makes me question, is this person or is this just like another Shelby?" Moving forward, I think a lot of students are going to continue to feel betrayal. Even though it happened 3 years ago, they would never forget how that made them feel at that time. That's the important part. What's the harm here, right? We'll talk about that. So reportedly, Hewitt became friends with students ages 13 through 16. Again, this is a woman in her 30s. And get this, at the same time that she was pretending to be a high schooler, ostensibly going to classes, playing sports, making friends, she was also employed by the Department of Children and Families as a social worker herself, collecting her $54,000 a year salary, again, while posing as a teenager. She also reportedly created fake identities for DCF workers to help with the enrollment process. And it wasn't just at school that Hewitt was reportedly pretending to be a teen. She also apparently used her DCF resources to enroll in Walden Behavioral Care. This is an eating disorder clinic in Dedham, Massachusetts, where she once again claimed to be this Daniela Herrera. We're going to talk more about Walden Behavioral and what employees there might have known about Hewitt. We'll get to that in just a minute. Now let's talk about what just happened, okay? After several delays, Hewitt was supposed to go to trial in Suffolk County Superior Court next week. But instead, the court announced that a plea agreement had been reached.
My understanding is that there is an agreed upon disposition in this case for a plea of guilty. I have had the opportunity already to review your Board of Probation record. I'm fully familiar with this case, as you know, and I've already had the opportunity to look at the guidelines here. So what we're going to do is we're going to move forward with that process, okay?
So Hewitt pleaded guilty on February 3rd to identity fraud, violating the standards of conduct for a public employee, and 3 counts of forgery of a document. The 4 other charges were dismissed. And Hewitt's attorney had previously told the court that his client had long-term mental health problems that she had started receiving treatment for that should be a factor to consider here. Hewitt herself addressed some of those issues during a statement on Tuesday. Take a look.
Thank you, Your Honor, for letting me speak. I'm truly sorry for the harm that I know that I have caused, and I recognize that my conduct disrupted the Boston Public Schools and caused confusion, alarm, and probably fear to students, families, and staff. I should never have been there, and through my actions, I violated the trust of the school community, my family, and everybody in my life that loved me. And I am deeply sorry for the pain that I caused, and I carry a lot of shame every day regarding it. And so I was not being a good person. And I am continuing intensive mental health treatment, medication, and counseling to try to be a better one. And I know that that doesn't undo the harm that I know that I caused, but I accept full responsibility, and I hope that anyone I hurt can heal from it. And I'm very truly sorry for my incredibly selfish decisions.
I'm not waiving any fees.
Ms. Hewitt, before having accepted your guilty plea on indictment number 2384 CR 555 on offenses 1, 2, 3, 7, and 9, consideration of your guilty plea, the court does place you on probation for a period of 4 years. Those probationary periods will run concurrent with each other at the same time as one another.
So Hewitt was ordered to serve 4 years of probation for each guilty plea, which is going to be served concurrently, so at the same time. If the sentences had been consecutive, by the way, she would have faced 20 years of supervision. She also had to pay more than $9,000 in restitution. And as part of her probation, she has to continue getting therapy, take any medication that she's prescribed. She has to stay away from all Boston public schools. She can't work as a social worker. She can't seek a social worker license. I think all this makes sense. But here's the thing. That's not the end of the story. There are still a lot of questions surrounding how this could have happened, especially when you learn that Hewitt had at one point moved in with her longtime therapist. Yeah, this is a person who allegedly sat alongside her as she unrolled. According to the Boston Globe, Rebecca Burnett, also sometimes called Becky, a licensed clinical social worker, former supervisor at Walden Behavioral Care, which I mentioned before, could face disciplinary action. Burnett expressed shock when the allegations against Hewitt came out, though, but many have since questioned, how much did she actually know about what was going on? How much did she actually know about Hewitt's true background? So prosecutors alleged that Hewitt told Burnett and other Walden employees that, look, she was so traumatized from being trafficked as a child, she couldn't remember her real age. But the Globe reports that Hewitt had actually been enrolled at Walden Behavioral Care before using her true identity. And anonymous employees and former patients claim there's no way that Burnett wouldn't remember her. So how could she have been fooled, right? And why did she let Hewitt move in with her? That's a good point too. That's at some point, Hewitt apparently posing as a foster child moved in with Burnett and her partner, a man named John Smith. That's already pretty fishy, by the way, and it's considered by many to be a pretty big ethical violation for a patient and therapist to live together. But there's no way Burnett couldn't have at least had some suspicions that something was going on, right? I don't know, maybe. Burnett's lawyer, Connie Tran, told the Globe after Hewitt's arrest that, quote, Hewitt utilized various fabricated personas to deceive Walden, BPS, and Rebecca into believing she was in fact a child who was legally in DCF's custody. Tran also claimed Rebecca did not facilitate Shelby Hewitt's enrollment into BPS. Rather, Hewitt undertook this action independently. But school administrators, they've pushed back, insisting that that just doesn't track. Reporter Patricia Wen wrote in a 2024 Boston Globe article, they say Burnett was present either on Zoom or in person to complete enrollment paperwork in August of 2022 for 16-year-old Daniela Herrera, and then in June of 2023 for 13-year-old Ellie Blake. Officials say Burnett's use of a second name in the school system, Ellie, raises questions about how certain she was about the truth of the first one, Daniela. According to the Globe, at least 6 complaints have been filed against Burnett with the state social worker board since Hewitt's arrest, so they're looking into whether she could face any sort of punishment. She apparently no longer works for Walden Behavioral, but the Globe reports that people they contacted at the clinic wouldn't even confirm if she'd been fired. Now, her attorney, when it comes to her licensing as a social worker, Paul Cyril, told the Boston Globe this week that hearings on her case are expected to begin this summer. All right, I want to talk more about this, and I want to bring in former criminal prosecutor Dan Schorr, who also works very closely with schools and other educational institutions when it comes to potential crimes on campus. He's the perfect guest for this. Dan, have you ever seen anything like this before? Somebody impersonating this level, and by the way, able to pull it off for quite some time.
Yeah, it is really strange. I haven't seen a case like this except like back in the 80s with Johnny Depp on TV, where someone like poses as right, posing as a high school student. So many of the cases that we talk about, there's someone who's a victim and there's a lot of, concern about that. Here, it's kind of strange because you don't have a specific person who's victimized, obviously taxpayers and resources. And the question that I would ask is, what was the motive for doing this? Was it to take advantage of something, or was it to have a larger scam, or was it just someone with some mental health issues who for some reason thought this was a good idea? Because it doesn't seem like anyone's being specifically harmed in a way that's concerning.
Let me push back on that. So she was receiving a salary while she was pretending to be a student.
Right.
Number 2, I do wonder what the harm is to the students, the people that she befriended, the people that were invested in her life, the people that she communicated with. They may have trust issues moving forward. I feel like this has to present some sort of psychological damage.
It's possible, and definitely fraud is really important. I'm also a former inspector general in Yonkers, and I investigated fraud of financial, resources of a city. So I do take that very seriously, but I guess I see it compared to some of the other cases we talk about where you're dealing with intimate partner violence and sex abuse and things like that, where really they live with lifelong trauma, the people who experience that. But obviously you want only the people who should be in a school to be in that school. I haven't seen something like this where someone has pretended to attend the school or pretended to be eligible to attend the school and get those benefits with, and as you said, she's also working for the city, the government. So she's not obviously not doing her job if she's at school.
Well, also I'll say, look, brought up on fraud and forgery charges, obviously, but there is something deeply unsettling. And I will also say a safety risk. Imagine for a moment that you're not dealing with her, but somebody else who's posing as a child, and they're 30 years old, an adult hanging out with children. You know where that can go.
Right. I mean, we certainly can't allow this to happen. And I think a lot of times criminal prosecutions aren't just about punishing that specific defendant, but it's about deterrence and making sure that there's a message sent that if you do this, you are going to be facing criminal charges. Doesn't look like she's going to be incarcerated, but certainly she was facing that. And she will have this hanging over her head. This is going to affect her life, her career. It's also public. So whatever job she tries to get next, that's going to undermine that. And hopefully that will deter other people from doing this. It's certainly unusual for someone to be interested in attending school. I know when I was in high school, I couldn't wait to get out. So it's interesting to see someone trying to get in years later. And you wonder why. There's obviously some mental health issues going on there.
4 years enough? 4 years probation enough? No jail time?
I think so. This isn't someone who appears to be a violent threat to the community, and there's no reason to have her incarcerated. I don't think she's a danger from what we've seen. As I was just saying, it is important to send a message not only to her, but also to the community that you can't do this. You are going to be prosecuted. If she doesn't have a criminal record, which as far as I can tell, she doesn't, then I don't think you need to incarcerate someone like this for a nonviolent crime, but it's still a serious conviction that's going to be with her for the rest of her life.
She's also been ordered, as I mentioned, to stay away from schools. The question, of course, will be how often is she actually checked upon? How do they enforce that?
Right. Well, if she's on some kind of probation, there should be some supervision. So it's not as if she's going to be monitored 24/7. And if someone reports that they see her in a school, near a school, then she could face jail time just from the violation.
Do you know what tools probation officers have to track somebody?
Yeah, I mean, some of them use GPS tracking where people have actual either a bracelet or something else where their location is always known, and if they and the technology is incredible now. It's where you can see, okay, the person's near a school, they're near some other place that's prohibited, or they're getting close, and we're going to contact them to let them know. So the technology is definitely out there. It's a matter of whether the oversight feels that that's necessary, or is it just something that's a cautionary instruction to her, and if she's caught, she's going to face enhanced punishment such as incarceration.
Do you see, I mean, in cases, if you've ever seen this before, do you see reoffending?
It would, if she reoffended, it would be hard to see her doing the same type of thing because now that her name is public, when if she's trying to enroll in another school, for example, you would think that the name would come up in a basic search online of that she's tried to do this before when you're just looking at someone's record when they're being enrolled. Also, the older she gets, it's going to be harder and harder for anyone to pose as a high school student and get away with it. So I think this specific act is probably not going to be something where someone would reoffend, but the general nature of fraud and someone trying to game the system to get a benefit and take advantage of taxpayer funds and resources, that's something that is a danger that you could see someone reoffending in the future in a different way.
Why do you think somebody would do this?
That's the big question. And I know her lawyer was saying that she has some mental health issues. And I'm sure there's a larger story to this that we don't know about why she wanted to go back to high school. Maybe there's something that she felt she was missing in her life that she would get from doing that. Maybe she wanted to be with younger people for some reason. We don't, as you alluded to before, someone might do this for a real nefarious purpose because they're going to do something that's harmful to other high school age students. Or is it someone who just wanted to be back in that time of their lives because later on their life wasn't going the way they wanted to? So someone pining away for high school glory days, we just don't know. But clearly someone who does this has some kind of mental health issues. They're not mentally well adjusted if they're enrolling in schools because they're going to get caught at some point. I don't think this is something you could just get away with and you're going to just graduate from the high school at that age and no one's going to ever realize that you're older.
Yeah, there's always a lot of complicated factors, whether it is to live the glory days, whether something happened in your childhood, you didn't really feel like you had a childhood and you go back. I'm not trying to justify it, but I've seen cases like that before. I want to go back to something that I mentioned, how she was able to do this. I mean, how was she able to exploit the loopholes in the system to become a student? The superintendent for Boston Public Schools called this, quote, a case of extremely sophisticated fraud. A, how do you think she did it? B, look, do you think she had help? I mentioned before her alleged fake dad who came to one of the schools. Is this something that she could do on her own? How was she able to do it? You think she had help?
It seems like something you would need some kind of help for because you have to provide some kind of identification. And maybe she was able to create fake identification on her own. Getting someone else to pose as a fake dad is also obviously another part of this that's interesting. So how sophisticated is she in terms of understanding what the schools are going to require and how she can manipulate her information to satisfy what the school is asking for? And we don't know how lax the school system was in terms of monitoring who's enrolling and who's not. That's another thing. There's a lot of students in a school system like this. Sometimes they're overwhelmed. A lot of school systems are short-staffed. There's budget cuts in a lot of places recently, and maybe that was a contributor to it. But I would think she's either sophisticated in terms of how she creates fake identification and other things that can mislead the school, or she might have gotten some help. And also, if she got some help, we don't know if the person who helped her knew what they were helping her with. But certainly, it's a problematic issue that needs to be looked into more.
Did you see about Rebecca Burnett, right? This licensed clinical social worker, this former supervisor at Walden Behavioral Care, the person she apparently moved in with? There's been a lot of questions about, did she help facilitate her enrollment? Her legal team says no, that she didn't in any way. She was deceived. But but a lot of questions surround her. And like, how is it possible she wouldn't know what was going on? How is it possible, you know, she didn't know that she wasn't a child? What are your thoughts on Burnett's legal consequences?
Well, I would assume that law enforcement looked into that. That doesn't mean that they found the answer, but I would imagine that whenever there's a prosecution like this, I know when I was a prosecutor or an inspector general investigating fraud or misconduct, I would want to look into who else knew that this person was possibly doing the misconduct and what was their role. So I'm sure that was looked into. Also, there was a plea deal here with the defendant. So you would think that part of the negotiations would be trying to ascertain from her if she's willing to say that someone else was involved. Now, some people are willing to do that, some people are not, but I would assume this is explored. If it was just oral communication, though, between them about what was happening, and this defendant doesn't want to reveal that, it's really hard to find proof that law enforcement can go forward with.
What about the fact that, as I mentioned before, aside from this, she's facing multiple complaints. Her attorney indicated to the Boston Globe that hearings on her case are expected to begin this summer. I'm talking about Burnett when it comes to her licensing as a social worker. What can we expect there? What kind of disciplinary action could we expect with respect to Burnett?
I'm sure this is going to come up, and because part of her role is to be knowledgeable about the people she's working with. So whether or not there's something that hurts her license or gets her in trouble in some other way, ultimately, we just can't tell at this point. But I'm sure that's an issue that's going to be a focus of the review, because it is a concern to when you're licensing someone or someone's in a position of authority through their specific expertise. You want to know, are they doing the right thing, not only by the person they're helping, but also by society?
Typically in these proceedings, would she testify? Would Burnett go on and say, hey, or provide some sort of statement about what happened here?
She might be asked to. I don't know all the ins and outs of those types of proceedings, and whether you have to answer all questions or you can decline to answer questions. But again, I think it would be hard to prove knowledge here unless there's some kind of communication, a text message, or this defendant who just is in this plea talking about how she was assisted. So other than that, someone could just keep denying, like you were talking about before, and say, I didn't know anything about this. It's really hard to prove otherwise unless you have some kind of evidence.
All right, Dan Schorr, let's meet again, maybe under different circumstances. This is a strange one, an odd one. Like you said, doesn't have the same kind of, consequences or effect or harm as other cases, but it is disturbing, to say the least, particularly if you're thinking about somebody who was able to exploit, again, loopholes in the system. But Dan Schorr, thank you for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Jesse, always great to talk with you. Thank you.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. We're also up on NBC's Peacock as well. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, you can check out my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday at 11 p.m. Eastern. See you next time, everybody.